Around the time when I was doing my Form 4, there used to be a song called Roses for Mama. Today is her birthday. Well, roses for my mother. Today is her birthday. She was born on 23rd February 1940. This song, I used to hear it when my mom was alive. And there was a famous musician, Western musician, country music, who was singing that one day a young boy, whom in Kenya we can call Chokora, approached him and said that he wanted some money. When the musician asked him the money for what, the boy said that he wanted to buy roses for his mama. Today is her birthday. The man was moved, the musician was moved. He gave the boy money, but he wanted to counter check. So the boy went, without knowing that the musician was following him, went to a flower shop, bought some flowers, went to the cemetery where the boy's mother was buried, and the boy told the mother's grave that, "Mom, unlike other years, this year I was almost unable to buy you flowers for your birthday. But a kind-hearted man gave me money that I bought the flowers for you." Then the musician walked away without the boy knowing, and the musician went back to the same shop and bought flowers and took to the musician's mother's grave, which coincidentally was also his mother's birthday. So he was singing, "Roses for Mama. Today is her birthday." So today, I commemorate my mother's birthday because she was born on 23rd February 1940. So today is her birthday. What can I say about my mother? A lot. There are so many things I can talk, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. First of all, I want to pay tribute to her relatives because she is buried at Kayaba. Kayaba is roughly the middle point between Bishop Gatimu Gandu Girls and Tumutumu Mission Hospital. She is buried there where she was born, brought up, educated, and now she is forever lying there. I want to pay tribute to her relatives because they really minded her when she was alive, and they're still minding about her even several years after she had died. Uncle Paul received that on behalf of the Kareithi family. All of them, but you receive on behalf of them. What do I remember my mother about? I do remember my mother. I can say that she liked religion more than education. Why do I say that? I have two examples during my primary school days. One day, while in standard 2, she used to give me 1 shilling for offering. So one day I believed, hey, why don't I change this 1 shilling into 10 cents coins? I changed, and when I went to church, I offered a 10 cents coin and remained with 90 cents. But she noticed that I was buying a lot of snacks around and came. All mothers are that way. I think mothers go to a training that when they want to hear something from you, they become very friendly. She said, hey, well, I'm seeing you buying things, whatever. Where did you get the money? And the frank person in me said, mom, this time I was clever. Instead of taking the 1 shilling for the offertory, I took their 10 cents and I remained with 90 cents. That is why I'm buying all these things. I can say for sure that there's no day she has ever beaten me as much as she did that day. There's a time, a few years later, that I missed going to class for almost a term. When she knew about it, she just called me aside and told me of the importance of education, counseling. So I also remembered that every day up to the time when my parents separated, every Sunday she made sure that we went to church. She was very much particular. Don't be late to church, you have to be very smart. But I don't think that going to school she was that particular. It happened like this, that me and my brother Pius, we were in the same school, and we had neckties, which were made of bladder. And I lost my tie, then went and told my father that I've lost. No, I didn't say I've lost my tie. I told him that students in the upper classes required the normal tie, but not bladder. Bladder was for junior. I was covering up so that I put my brother, who was in standard 2, out of picture so that I get. And I was given money, went to the uniform distributors somewhere along Ronald Ngala Street. They still have that shop up to today. I went there, was given a tie, went to school. The tie got lost. And again, I went to Wamze. There was a boxing coach whose nickname was Omhololo, but people used to call him Wamze. I went to Wamze, told him that my father had given me money to buy a school tie, and I've lost the money. He gave them the money. I remember the school tie then used to cost 5 shillings. Then I went to the same school distribution. I bought the tie, went to school. Within the same week, I had lost 3 ties. The bladder, the one my father had bought me, and the one that the boxing coach Wamze had bought me. I had lost that. And Mrs. Washira, who was the class teacher for 6A1 Bagadi Road Primary School, 1976. The first thing she used to do immediately she entered the classroom, she used to say, anybody without tie, get out. So after going there 2 or 3 times, after the class, we had taken our roll call, she would say, anybody without a tie, out. So I spent the whole term without going to school. Then, one day, I don't know how my father came to know about it. He came to school, but the day he came to school, some things happened. We believe in miracles. Somebody, a class prefect was Tiko, his nickname was Tiko. appeared while I was in, it was lunchtime and I was going home, and he was going to my home to go and tell me that I should start attending classes. Mrs. Washira had wondered why I was no longer attending classes, and she was told that my father was very harsh, and I might not be, I might have sneaked or something. So Tiko had been sent to go home and tell me that I was exempted from from wearing a tie. I went, as I was coming out of the place where I sneaked to go home for lunch, Tiko met me and said, "Oh, this is the school you go." Then he told me that Mrs. Washira had said that I should just go to classes without a tie. The following day, I went to school, and that is the day that my father had heard that I normally don't go to school, and he had gone to school to find out. But he was called to the office by Mr. Moses Moreithi, who was the new headmaster then, and told him, the boy has not been coming because he fears you. So don't go and beat him at home. That evening, I had a sit-in with my parents. When I had a sitting with my parents, they talked to me, but I knew my mother's advice was genuine, but my father's advice, they were entering from one ear and leaving another ear because I was ready for beating. But I was not beaten. The following week, we had our end of term exams, and I was number 4. So my parents called me again together and said, if you have been missing classes and you are number 4, suppose you had been attending. That is my mother. She was not the type of beating, but the only reason that I was not beaten is that Mr. Moses Moreithi had said that the only reason I was not going to classes is because I feared my father. So he had told my father that being harsh and being quick to beat me up is the reason why I did not attend classes. So he should not, and I was not beaten. Another thing I remember about my parents, although today is my mother's day, my mother's birthday, another thing I remember about my parents is that they never agreed on my date of birth. My father always insisted up to the time he died that I was born on 16th July 1961, which is a Sunday. But on the other hand, my mother always insisted, even up to the time she died, that I was born on 17th July 1961. But I go for the 16th July 1961 because when I was 5 years old, my father applied for my birth certificate. So the birth certificate that I have since I was 5 years old indicates that I was born on Sunday, 16th July 1961. Another thing that my parents failed to agree is that I was baptized at Kipkaren by the Catholic Mission from what today is called Archbishop Jenga. Nowadays, it's called Archbishop, but during my time, it used to be called Bishop Njenga. I was baptized and given the name Raphael. I don't recall my mother calling me James. The few occasions she ever called me James is I remember when I was in Standard 2, there was somebody with a shop near Kajiado, nowadays called Kajiado Referral Hospital. He used to be called Jimmy, and so my mother used to tell me that I'm a namesake of Jimmy, the shopkeeper, and I would not like the name because we had a neighbor who had a dog, and they used to call that dog Jimmy. But how did I get this name James? Well, I was baptized in my infancy as Raphael. And whenever people, especially my father's colleagues, whenever they used to visit and they wanted to know all our names, my siblings would tell their names. But when it came to my turn, I would tell them I'm JI-TENGE. So they used to be concerned and they would tell my father, uh, Mr. JI-TENGE, how comes that one of your sons is called JI-TENGE? Then out of the blues, my father said he's James. And later on, when he went for our birth certificates, he filled in the name James. Now you know. Among Kikuyus, the eldest child per gender is named after the parents of the husband. Now, being my mother's eldest son, according to Kikuyu tradition, I'm supposed to be named after my paternal grandfather. And according to Bukusu traditions, a child is named after any person who is dead relative on either sides. There is also other things. I've already recorded a tape on how Luyas name people. But you can still watch it. But I'm saying here that I was named after my paternal grandfather, JI-TENGE, because he was dead. If my grandfather would have been alive when I was born, I would not have been named that. And among the Bukusus, they have a name for somebody from a shadow name, from where, especially if that person was not named from the mother's side. If the person is, whether a woman or a man, if that person is named on the father's side, there is usually a shadow name which is used by people from his or her maternal side. For example, you can know somebody called Wekesa in Bungoma, but when you visit his maternal relatives in Kitale, you will hear him being called Wafula. So that is a name, a shadow name, which we call Elira Liebohocha or Lirira Liewiwa. Me, I did not have that because according to the Kikuyu tradition, I was properly named. But here is a funny thing about it. You know, among the Bukusu traditions, your mother always like calling you by the name, your shadow name, the name that is from her place. And my mother didn't give me a Kikuyu name. But among the Bukusus, they think I have a Kikuyu name. They used to ask me, what is your Kikuyu name? I'd say, even today, that I have no Kikuyu name. But then they would say, we know your name. Then they would mention that name. But I'll tell you how that name came. My mother was and still is, apart from being the best mother, she was and still is the best chef. So she would make good meals and she would fill in our plates. Filling in our plates, everybody would go for a second helping, except one. Everybody would go for the second helping and they'd be satisfied, except one, who is me. I would go for the third helping. And whenever I used to go for the third helping, she would quarrel me, said, Wanda hoo, Wanda hoo. So if you go to Webuye, people think that my Kikuyu name is Wanda hoo. But Wanda hoo in Kikuyu means glutton. Glutton. I wanted to mention that because my mother always, after she cooked, she always referred to me as Wanda hoo. Where our home, my grandmother, as I've said, my mother was not only related to the Kuguru family, but she was brought up by the Kuguru family. She's a cousin to Peter Kuguru, but at the same time, she's a foster sister to him. Peter Kuguru reminds me, you know, there's a place along Karatina and Nyeri Road called Morogoro. That is where my mother grew up. And when Peter Kuguru used to go to school, my mother would carry him on the back, then wade into a river, and then he goes to school. And later, when the class time is there, she would go and then carry him through the river. Or you have seen a river Marwa, those who have been to Kiganjo. So, and on my father's side, my paternal grandmother is the family of the Wamalwa, kina Eugene. So Eugene Wamalwa and me, or Wamalwa Kijana and me, our fathers were first cousins. And my grandmother was a Bukusu, Mwengere, of course. And we had so many mothers. In English, we call aunt. We had so many mothers. My father's brothers and stepbrothers had married several wives, but my grandmother was very selective. She used to surround herself with Bukusu daughters-in-law who had even been married through the other three JI-TENGE families. As you know, Hachiti Chesoni, the mother to achieve justice, was a member of one of the other three JI-TENGE houses. Her grandmother, Mrs. Chesoni's grandmother, was Mrs. JI-TENGE, Wakoli JI-TENGE, and my grandmother was Nekesa JI-TENGE. They were co-wives. So my grandmother selected only Bukus. My other fathers had married other Luyas, they had married Cabras, they had married Tachoni, they had married Gisu, married everything. But she used to select Bukusu daughters-in-law even from the other houses and surround them with them. My mother being a Kikuyu, we were brought up talking Kibukusu, whereas we are Tachonis. Tachonis are pre-Kalenjins who now speak Luhya. And as we were growing up, there's this community work where whenever we had a Christmas party or New Year, every mother would bring a bunch of banana, several chickens and whatever. And you see, my mother would just be staying somewhere, not knowing. And it used to hurt me when I hear other mothers backbiting her. Oh, anajifanya, sijui, she's married to a senior police officer, haizi enda mtoni, haizi. Whenever she would appear, you'd think that they are lynching her. Every mother would go after her. Oh, where sijui nini nini. And then she would be calm. One thing I like about my mother, I didn't inherit that. One thing that she had was, you could attack her, you could abuse her, you could do anything. She would just keep quiet until you're finished and say, have you finished? Yeah. And she would confront one and say, what tribe are you? And you say, I'm a Cabras. From where? From South Cabras. You can walk from here to your place, yeah. And you, I'm a Bukusu from Ebutecho. Na wewe? I'm Mwanga from Mumias. You mean you just come from this district? Eh? And when you grew up, when you were girls, you knew that when we have such an occasion, each wife was supposed to go and bring so many pots of water. Yes. And then she would turn to them and say, and what about me? You have not even taught me. but you're blasting me. Then that is when they would recognize that she's not a Luya, she's a Kikuyu. Then she would ask them, how many bunches of bananas am I supposed to? Your son, you have one son and you have one stepson. Do this, go and bring 2 bunches. And then say, how many pots am I supposed to go and get from? Hendo makeba asinda, hendo mahu, nalakanga mohoko kaba fulu. So, sorry for that interpretation was meant for Luyas. So she would say, I'm supposed to go to the river and bring 2 pots of water. I say, yes. Okay, let me go. Then they said, no. We apologize to you. You know, we at times we even forget that you're not a Luhya. And then they would, and then every time that one would, whatever that one would have happened, there was a song my mother would sing in Kikuyu as she went home. Kabadhayo mwendwa wakwa. Kabadhayo in Kikuyu means afadhali amani. Peace is better. So to me, I've always believed that my mother was a Mwigwithania, a reconciler. Many people have said that I'm very good in linguistic. I speak many languages. Kenyan languages, I speak 9 fluently. Only that I cannot sustain a topic on more than 5 for 30 minutes. We talk about 20, then I allow you to speak in that vernacular and I answer you in Swahili. But if we are to talk about something in 10 to 20 minutes, you'll find that I'll talk and you'll think that I belong to that tribe. My mother, that is one thing I inherited from my mother. Same applies to my photographic mind. I can sit down. If you have seen a lot of interviews where I avoid the camera and I avoid looking at the people who are asking me questions, and I remove my glasses, I'm short-sighted. So when you see me talking without glasses on, usually I'm blind and I talk out of my mind. No notes, no nothing. And if I'm talking, let's say in an interview for a TV station or anything, and something catches up my mind, I lose what I was talking. My mother also had a photographic mind. She used to lie on a sofa set and look and describe something that had happened several decades ago. So anytime anybody says I'm good in linguistic and I'm good in photographic mind, I remember my mother. I speak Kinyarwanda. I speak Kirundi. Can I speak Kirundi a bit? Mugenzi, urakumeye? Ndakumeye. I speak Kirundi, Rwanda. I also speak Lingala, and that one I think it is something that I inherited from my mother. Lastly, she used to like a song which was sung in Uganda, in Kiganda. We never knew what it is, although recently some people tried to translate it for me, but we used to think that they were singing about Busa. The song used to say, Wambusa, Obwanka Bekele, Amazima Bekele Elamu. My mother really liked that. Maito. I'll address my mother in 2 languages. Maito, komadhayo, netugashamania, ede ya mwisho. Mai wanje, kono bulai, hwakusima, nehuliakanana, isuku yo mwisho. Amen.